two more hostages are back in Israel after being freed in an overnight raid in Gaza. Israel says they were rescued in a special military operation in the southern city of Rafah. The two men were kidnapped during the October 7 terror attacks on Israel by Hamas, which is regarded as a terror organisation by multiple countries. They were flown by helicopter to a hospital near Tel Aviv for medical checks.
Reunited with their families, Luis Ha and Fernando Simon Marman were rescued by Israel's military and security forces during overnight raids in Rafah, after 128 days held captive by Hamas in Gaza. They are currently receiving treatment in a hospital, where they are both said to be in a stable condition. For their families, the sense of relief is mixed with concern for the hostages still being held in Gaza.
Luckily for us as a family, they were saved tonight. But I must say that the job is not done. We are happy today, but it's not we didn't win. It's just another step towards bringing all the other 134 hostages back home. And it doesn't matter if it's babies, women, men, elder people, everybody must come back as soon as possible.
Israeli airstrikes devastated parts of Rafah overnight, flattening buildings, and destroying a mosque. Dozens of Palestinians were killed, and many more taken to hospital with serious injuries.
We were at home when the airstrikes were going on. I told my mother that I wanted to use the bathroom as she was awake. Suddenly, all the walls of the bathroom and all the water containers above it collapsed on me.
Most of the roughly 1.4 million Palestinians currently in Rafah fled from other parts of Gaza. They were trying to escape the intense fighting in other areas, and the city was designated a safe zone for civilians by the Israeli army. But recent Israeli strikes on Rafah have eliminated any sense of security for Palestinians there.
And to pick up some of those points with Dekel Lifschitz, who joins us now from Tel Aviv. His grandmother, Yocheved, was taken hostage by Hamas on October the 7th. She was later released later that month, but his grandfather, Oded, remains in Hamas captivity. Welcome to DW. Can we start with your reaction to this latest news that the Israeli military has freed two hostages?
Well, this is a really exciting thing. I tell you why. Because today, two families, basically this is one big family now, got their beloved ones back, two of them back. So these two families right now can sleep at night and understanding that they're back at home with them. And this is the most amazing thing, and this is the perfect present for those families who've been suffering so much. And for me, it's very hard, and I tell you why. Because we have evidence that shows that sometimes in military actions, sometimes Hamas increases their reaction for the hostages that's still being over there, that's still being hostage over there. So we freed two of them, but now it's making me more terrified about the other ones alive, because Hamas is a really tricky organization.
Right.
They don't really care about life, and they might hurt the other hostages over there. So
right. And your grandfather is amongst the hostages still being held, I understand. What have you heard
including
from
my grandfather.
about him? Yeah, what have you heard from or about him since he was taken?
The only thing we know about him that he did survive the 7th of October, and he been held in a room in Gaza. We're not really sure exactly where, but he's not well at all. The last news we got about him is around almost 4 months back. And yeah, this is not an ideal condition.
Right. OK. Now, we were just looking at some of those protests in Israel, and we have Mr. Netanyahu saying that the operation to free the hostages shows that it is right to keep up military pressure. The hostages who were released today or last night say that a deal is needed to secure the release of all the remaining hostages. Where are you in that argument?
I tell you what, this is an argument and this is not an argument. The last deal that have been that has done that they released almost released 110 people, 100 hostages been released by this deal. The army force really helped that because Hamas made her feel that they need some break to organize themselves for the next step, and they understood that they have to go for a deal. So it have influence about that. But in the bottom line, in the end, the army force might even kill those hostages, and it did happen. Some of the videos that we've seen, the last hostages that been died in there died because of Israeli bombed right next to a place over there, and Hamas guy was scared, so he shot the guy because he thought this might be a rescue, and he shot the hostages that been there. And this is a straight effect of this army.
And so was Mr. Netanyahu right to reject the Hamas counter proposals for a deal last week?
I think that Israeli need to go for a deal as fast as we can because we don't really have time for these hostages that are still over there. And I think that I'm not aware for all the information that Netanyahu is aware to. And I want to believe that everyone wants to do everything to release our beloved ones. But I do want to tell that we have to go for hard decisions. We have to. Because if we won't go for hard decisions, including accepting stuff that Hamas demanding, we won't have any chance to get them back alive. So that's the thing.
Thank you so much for joining us and sharing your thoughts with us. Dekel Lifschitz in Tel Aviv.
Thank you very much.
Marina Miron is a military analyst at the War Studies Department at King's College London. I asked her why it's such a difficult task for Israel to rescue the hostages.
Well, we have to understand in what conditions Hamas operates in Gaza. We know that on the one hand, they use buildings, civilian buildings. On the other hand, they also use underground tunnels. And it is to assume that they are not keeping the hostages all in one place, meaning that they would have dispersed them, because we have to understand the importance of hostages to Hamas. This is a bargaining chip that Hamas can use to negotiate ceasefires with Israel. So for Hamas, it's very important to ensure that Israeli soldiers do not find the hostages, and finding them is like finding a needle in a stack, but you first have to locate the stack. And so it's very, very difficult. And we have seen also cases where the Israeli soldiers didn't recognize their own hostages, so they don't know exactly what these people look like as well, making it even more serious.
Now, Israel has not come up with a plan for over 1 million displaced Gazans who are sheltering in Rafah. What would a potential ground offensive look like?
That is correct. There is no concrete plan except for sending these people, 1.5 million, to the north. I do not think that all of these people can be relocated. And conducting a ground offensive with 1.5 million packed into Rafah means that there will be collateral damage, and it is inevitable, because even if you're using precision-guided munitions to destroy buildings, there is still a risk of collateral damage. And of course, for the ground troops, this is not a nice environment to operate in, because they will have to separate the population from the Hamas, meaning that Hamas can just comfortably hide inside the population and not be easily distinguished, again creating a greater risk for civilian casualties, which would again benefit Hamas to show what Israeli military is doing to civilians. And of course, for the Israeli military, it is bad in a sense that neutral civilians who might not have supported Hamas before will certainly throw their support behind Hamas, seeing how the Israeli soldiers are killing Palestinians who are not part of the conflict.
Now, there have been reports, and that's a related issue, of Hamas fighters reappearing in the north. And there is ongoing fighting there around Khan Yunis as well. What's happening with the ground offensive in those areas?
Well, from what it looks like, the Khan Yunis area is still active in a sense that it is not completely cleared and under control of the IDF. And because Hamas still has a working part of their tunnel network, they can also use that in order to surprise the Israeli forces. And that's what they have been doing, making it very difficult to clear areas and to hold them. Meaning also that even if Israel comes up with a good plan to get some civilians out of Rafah, we have again the risk of Hamas fighters escaping together with those civilians and popping up in areas where one wouldn't expect them.
Marina Miron there from the War Studies Department at King's College London. Thank you very much, Marina.